Okay. Let's go.
Rape, if there was such a thing as a lake of rape, no one would be able to hold them accountable and say that that was evil or immoral. Okay. Now, when I say that God does nothing arbitrary, I'm saying that um, he does nothing on a whim. He does nothing capriciously. However, since he is the Alpha and Omega, and he possesses a deity, therefore we can use the word arbitrary in the other sense, meaning that there is no authority above him. So therefore, all of his decisions, or all decisions and decrees and stuff, are based off of his nature, his standards, so on and so forth, but nothing outside of him. So, and if he wanted to, I would say, I'm just, just kind of making things up here. If he wanted to, he could change those things, and it would, he could change that reality. So that's all I'm trying to say.
Wait, if God wanted to, he could make it the case that ordaining a lake of rape rather than a lake of fire was good?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, in that worldview. Yeah,
So I don't understand. What would be his reason for doing so?
that's where the other definition of arbitrary comes in, because he is Alpha and Omega. He's the beginning and the last. So there's nothing outside of him that would obligate him or influence him to make such a decision. It's because he's the standard. So
I don't get it. You said that all his actions are justified. So I'm just asking, what would justify that action?
his nature, his standard, his being, his aseity. So there's nothing at all outside of God that would measure whether or not what God is doing is right or wrong.
How does his
He's
aseity justify his action? I don't get it.
There's no standard outside of him. There's no law outside of him that would determine that gives a measurement to his actions being right or wrong, good and evil.
But that's not providing a justification. That's just saying there's no justification external to him.
Well, he glorifies himself. I mean, there's nothing outside of him. I don't know how else to answer the question.
You said, right, that he doesn't do anything arbitrarily or capriciously. Everything he does is justified, right? So if I ask what would justify him ordaining a lake of rape rather than a lake of fire, right? You saying that there are no external standards to him is not providing a justification, just reporting an irrelevant fact, right? So what would be the justification?
If there is nothing outside of him that would determine his actions being moral or just, then what else would there be? He is the standard. He is the standard. He sets the standard. So in that world, it would be perfectly just because he's the
I didn't
standard.
ask you if it would be perfectly just, right? I asked you what would justify him doing that rather than ordaining a lake of fire.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, well, I'll
Again, if
explain
I
it
said,
to you
yeah,
if you don't understand it, right? So normally we justify things, right, by providing reasons
mm,
why one course of action is better than another, right? So we
but
might say the reason why I should take a train rather than walk um, to get to New Jersey as quickly as possible is because trains are faster. And so if my aim is to get there more quickly, right, that's the reason why I should take a train rather than walk, right? That's an example of providing reasons, which is to say justifying an action, right? Does that make it clearer?
no, because we're not talking about convenience. We're talking about the issue of morality. I mean, that's why the question was asked in the first place about rape versus a lake of rape versus a lake of fire. You're asking me whether or not, you're not asking me which one is more convenient. You're asking me which one is more moral. So I'm telling you that in the issue of morality, since God is the standard, okay, we're not talking about convenience or how a person feels about a thing. We're coming up with a hypothetical question about the issue of morality and whether or not the rape, a lake of rape is better than a lake of fire, or vice versa. So again, in this hypothetical scenario, if we're basing it off of the Christian worldview, that God is the arbiter of morality. There is no standard outside of him that he is obligated to, because he is the standard. He is the arbiter of these things. So therefore, in that world, uh, rape, a, a lake of rape would not be immoral. It wouldn't be contrary to his nature, his standard, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why you were talking about convenience, right? Because I wasn't tied to convenience. I was just using that as an example. You seem to think there's some fundamental disanalogy there that I'm not seeing, right? But let's just get clear. When you say God, not everything God does is justified, I take it that you mean by justified that he acts on the basis of reasons, right?
Well, he's acting on the basis of his nature. Is a
Oh,
statement.
so
There's
so he
nothing.
doesn't he doesn't
When you say,
he doesn't act on the basis of reasons. Is that right?
no, I know what you mean. What you mean by on the basis of
Yeah.
reason?
So like, I have a reason.
Uh oh, you there? Did he cut out? Hello?
He got a phone call. Just give it a
Oh,
second.
okay.
You got a slight reprieve.
Actually, that's a
Congratulations.
good place for me to
Sorry about that.
start.
I got disconnected.
Yep, that's okay.
Yeah.
Can
So
you return the question?
yeah, you understand that I have a reason to take a train, right? And if my aim is to get to New Jersey as quickly as possible, right? The rational thing to do, right, would be to act in accord with reasons, right? Which is to say, what I have most reason to do. And since my ultimate aim is to get to New Jersey as quickly as possible, right, I have reason to take a train rather than walk. That's what I mean by reasons, right?
No,
You
I get
understand
that.
what you
I get
understand
that.
how reasons function
No,
to
no,
justify actions there?
I agree. I just wish you would use a better analogy, because because that analogy that you're bringing up about the train, is faster to do this, or be more rational to go this route than that route, because you could get there quicker. That's not an issue of morality. I rather you use an analogy with regards to more.
You understand what reasons are, right?
No,
In
I
that
understand that,
example?
but I understand
And
that.
you understand how reasons are appealed to justify actions there,
Yeah,
right?
but I understand. But
Okay, good.
again,
So
that
if you
analogy that you
understand
brought,
that, what I'm asking is,
but you
what I'm
understand that
asking is, if you
are of the
understand what reasons are,
first
what I'm
by
asking is,
analogy, not
yeah, I don't know why you keep talking. If you
well, no, you
understand
were
that,
talking over me, sir. I was
if
in
you,
the middle
yeah,
of answering a
yeah,
question.
because you're about to say something irrelevant.
No,
So
I'm not.
if you
I'm not.
understand, you think that I'm going to drop it?
No. Well, I'm not going to drop it
So you're
either.
just going to waste our time,
No,
and then I'm going to
you can
repeat the
think that if you
question
want.
that you're
That's fine.
dodging, that you're
What I'm
trying to
trying to
dodge
tell you is
now,
that you're
right?
not
All
able to
right,
get.
you can waste all our time if you want, then I'll
That's
just
fine. Just go
repeat
ahead.
the
I'll just keep
question that you're
talking over
trying
you
to
then.
dodge.
Since you can't ask me a question and then start talking over me. If you want to play that game, that's fine. Okay. I'm not running. I'm still here. But if you're not gonna let me finish, then we could keep playing this or talk over each other game if you want. I'm cool with it. Okay. All I'm trying to say is that I really don't think that the analogy that you brought up with regards to, you know, traveling and stuff like that is a good enough one, because that's not an issue of morality. I'm just asking you for your benefit, uh, if you could come up with another analogy with regards to morality, because what you're talking about there is an issue of convenience. Okay, the reason you have to go on this route instead of this route is because it will be quicker. Okay, yeah, I understand the reason behind that, but I'm talking about the issue of morality. How do we know that such and such is wrong, such and such is right? Are we determining it by how a person feels about it, how they, what type of advantages they could get from the thing? If it brings harm to a person, or are we going by something a lot deeper than that to determine, whether or not the thing is inherently good or evil? So that's all I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to understand what is your reasoning for believing that a lake of rape would be more convenient than a lake of fire, or vice versa?
Yeah, okay. So now you understand what I mean by a reason,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it's presumably what you mean by a reason, right?
Yes.
Like if I ask you what was your reason for taking the train rather than walk, you'll say,
Yeah.
well, because my aim was to get there more quickly. That
Right.
was my reason, right? Now you understand that appealing to reasons is what we do when we just give our justification for an action, right? Because when I ask you what is your reason for taking the train, I'm asking you what your justification is.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, okay. So now, when you say that everything that God does is justified, right? You understand that then to mean that God acts on the basis of reasons. Is that right?
Yeah. His reasons are ultimately to his glory.
So I'm trying to understand. Is is there something more glorious about ordaining a lake of fire than ordaining a lake of rape?
More glorious
Yeah.
than uh I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. I don't know.
Well, you were saying,
It would
weren't you
make it,
saying
it would
that,
make
weren't you saying that it would be capricious for God to ordain a lake of rape rather than ordain a
no,
lake of fire?
no. I didn't say that. I said there's nothing that God does that is capricious. He has a justified reason for all that he does or even
What's
permits.
his justification
Oh,
for
oh,
pursuing glory?
uh, himself.
What does it mean to say, what does it mean to say that himself is his justification for
Because
pursuing glory?
what else is there?
No, I didn't
There's
ask
nothing
you to
higher.
ask. I didn't ask you to answer a question with a question.
Okay, then I'll just tell you then. There's nothing higher than himself that he's obligated to abide by because he's the standard.
I don't
So that's the
understand what
thing.
that means, right? So, if I say, "Why did you take a
Doubting him.
train?" right, rather than walk,
Hmm.
right? You can say, "Oh, because it was faster that way, and I was trying to get there faster,"
Yeah, I
right?
understand.
But
Yeah.
it wouldn't make sense for me to say because me, right? If I
Hmm.
said, "Why did you take the train?" the answer was me, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I'm trying to understand when God aims for glory, right, rather than something else. Does he have a reason for that?
There's no other reason other than for his own
No,
glory.
no, I didn't ask you.
There's no.
I didn't ask you if he had another reason, right, for pursuing glory,
Mhm.
right? I'm asking you, is his pursuit of glory justified by a reason?
His glory is his reason for all that he does, all that he
I
permits.
don't understand. So God undertakes a set of actions, right, which
Mhm.
conduce to maximizing his glory, something like that. So glory is the aim, right? Glory is the aim,
You're gonna get it either way.
just
Yeah.
like going to New Jersey as quickly as possible is an aim, right? And so he undertakes a course of action, right, to bring about glory,
Hmm.
right? And we can ask a further question, right, which is why is it that God elects to pursue glory rather than something else? Right? Does
I
that
don't
have a
think there's any.
reason?
I don't. Well, I don't think there's any harm in asking these kinds of questions, but the answer stands firm that if God, since God possesses a deity, he's self-sufficient and he's not dependent on anything external to himself, then the only reasonable, logical response to that question is because of his own glory. That's it. Now you can say that that's arbitrary, capricious, whimsical, whatever you want to call it. You're welcome to think that if you want, but there's a reason he has all these things done. There's an ultimate purpose for it. The ultimate purpose is for his glory. Now, as a fallible, finite human being, subject to the laws of nature here in in the world, uh, is there a way that are there other things or other scenarios that I could probably come up with in my
So
mind that God?
I think Jack is trying to get Vekl to concede that he doesn't have access to the reasons behind God's morality. And then that leads to what, like open theism? Or wait, open fuck. I can't remember.
Could utilize to make things better or whatever? Of course I can. I can use my imagination if I want. But the fact of the matter is, this is the reality that we live in. There's nothing higher than God. God is not subject or subjugated by anything outside of himself. So therefore, he's under no obligation to do things in another way. No one can say to him that you're immoral for doing it this way, or moral for doing it that way, for that matter. He is the Alpha and Omega.
So his decision to pursue glory rather than something else isn't justified by a reason.
His decision to pursue glory isn't justified.
Isn't justified by a reason, is that right?
Well, it'd be justified according to his standard.
I don't know what you mean by according to his standard, right? I'm just asking, is there some explanation, right, in terms of reasons
I don't
why
know.
he pursues glory rather than something else?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question.
There's some like I can't remember. There's like a I remember talking about this with Albedo. There's some philosophical term where if you take the position, okay, so like God's reasons for morality unknowable. If God is good by definition, then morality is meaningless and unknowable. But if morality is independent of God, then it isn't. He is subject to it. It's. What is the term for like morality being meaningless or something? I can't remember there's some philosophical term. I can't remember it.
If God possesses a deity, then he has no obligation to answer to anyone. He's self-sufficient. So what else?
Well, wait a minute. But you said that everything that God does is justified by a reason, right? And we're agreeing that God undertakes to pursue glory rather than some other value, right?
But God doesn't have to.
And so the question is, what's the justification for that? Is that arbitrary? Which is to say it has no justification, it's capricious? Or is there some reason that justifies that?
Well, the only thing I can do is to continue.
Yeah, so I think if we don't have access to God's reason for morality, then it becomes arbitrary. I think that's what he's getting at. And then there's no meaning to morality that we can discern. I think. Is that what he's getting at?
To bring it back to God, since he is the Alpha and Omega. Again, if he is not contingent upon anything external to himself, the only answer we can say is that the reason why he does these things is ultimately for his glory. That's the reason. There is nothing that's hindering him from doing anything. He's not on some sort of mission or some sort of endeavor, and there's some sort of obstacle in his way. Or anything like that. You know, some Arminians believe that, some open theists believe that, but that's not the biblical teaching of it.
I would say God is totally free and transcendent, so he doesn't. I wouldn't say he needs to justify with reason any of his actions, being that he is the ultimate arbiter of reality. His actions justify themselves, I would say.
If God is the Alpha and Omega, he's all powerful. He has exhaustive knowledge of things past, present, and future, and he even decrees things to occur. Then we can't say that there's some sort of, reasoning that he has to appeal to with humans for that's going to make the humans happy or anything of that sort. I mean, he does these things ultimately for his glory, whether we like it or not.
No, I didn't ask you. We've already agreed that he does things for his glory, right? The question is, why does he undertake to pursue glory rather than to pursue some other aim?
I don't know.
But he has a reason, presumably.
Other than because he's God. I
Wait,
don't know.
how would him being God be an answer to the question? I don't get it.
Because he's not contingent upon anything external to himself. He owes nothing to no one or nothing. So I don't understand what reason. If I have a reason for something, it's either because I'm trying to justify an action that I've done that somebody might disagree with or agree with, whatever, or because I'm thinking about some sort of convenience for myself. God, none of that applies to God in this case. God doesn't owe anybody an answer for anything that he does. If he does give an answer, it's because he chooses to do so. And number two, since we're talking about an all powerful being, there is never an issue of convenience for God, since he's omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. So therefore, the only conclusion I can say as to why he does these things is I keep bringing it back to the ultimate reason, which is because of who he is and what he's, who he is and what he is. There's nothing outside of himself. I don't know how to answer the question that you're looking for.
Well, now it sounds like you're saying that you were equivocating on justification and reasons when you applied those to God, right? Because I thought that when we said, right, the way we understand justifying an action, right, by reasons is in accord with the example that I gave, right, about going to New Jersey. You said you understood that, right, and that is what you meant by justification when you said that God's actions are justified. And so you said that God ordains a lake of fire because it conduces to his glory. That's the reason, right? And so reason there works the same way as it does in the human case, right? But now when I ask you what justifies God's pursuit of glory rather than some other aim, all of a sudden you're saying, oh, well, there's no so intelligible sense of justification for that can be appealed to in the case of God, right? So it just sounds like when you say God is not capricious and not arbitrary, everything he does is justified, you're just equivocating on justification, and you didn't mean what we meant all along. So which is it? Is it the same sense or is it a different sense?
No, I don't think I'm equivocating when I'm talking about justification. Okay.
Yeah, I think Vekel's error is to say that God isn't capricious when God is capricious.
Again, what I'm saying to you is that if God needed to justify something, okay, well, first of all, he doesn't owe a man an answer to anything. First of all, if he does just choose to justify anything that he does, that would be purely out of his choice, not out of any obligation that he has to us. Okay, so God is able to justify all that he does within the universe. The question is, why does he choose to do these things at all to begin with? You know, and I'm trying to bring it back to his being, his aseity. Could God have not put the tree, in the Garden of Eden, the tree of the knowledge of fruit, the tree of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, in the garden? Yes, of course, but he did. Okay, and the only reason we can come up with, from a anthropomorphic sense, is ultimately for God's glory, because since God is, again, the arbiter of all these things, there's no obligation outside of him that he was under for him to put that tree in the Garden of Eden. He did it, in this sort of a sense, arbitrarily. There was no obligation he had. So, and his reason is ultimately to bring glory to himself.
Great. So I'll take you at your word that you're not equivocating. So then I'll just repeat the question we're still trying to get to the bottom of. When God undertakes to pursue glory rather than some other value, what's the justification for that?
Himself.
Yeah, see, so I don't understand how saying the word himself provides a reason. right? If I asked you, why did you decide to go to New Jersey? Why was your aim to go to New Jersey as quickly as possible rather than get a cup of coffee? Would it be an answer to that question to say myself or yourself?
No, it's a little bit of a different question. Because if I'm trying to go somewhere and I have a desire to get there at a specific time at a specific pace, yeah, then I could justify a particular response to the question asked as to why I chose one way to get there or not. Um, but we're talking about the nature of God here, who again is omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient. So that makes him the arbiter of all things, and he's under no obligation. So therefore, all that he does or decrees is ultimately because of something that he's doing apart from any obligation. There's no obligation that God has to do anything that he does. So therefore, the only way I can answer that question is that his glory is the reason. That's the only way I can answer that question.
No, it's not an answer to the question, why pursue glory rather than some other value, to say because he pursues glory.
So is that your why pursue glory then?
I'm
Is that
asking what the
what you're
justification for that is, yeah. Because you said everything that God does is justified, it's not capricious, right? And you understood, we agreed that you understood justification as an appeal to reasons, right? Reasons justifying an action, right? And we talked about what reasons are, and you understood that. And then later there was a worry that you were equivocating, right? When you say reasons justify God's actions, right? In the way that reasons justify human actions, right? There was a worry of equivocation, right? And so we asked you to clarify, and you insisted you weren't equivocating, right? And I took you at your word. So if it's the case that everything that God does is justified by reasons, I'm just asking, given that God decides to pursue glory rather than something else, what justifies that decision?
Yeah, I at this point I'm not quite sure what kind of answer you're looking for.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're just agreeing that you're just contradicting yourself, right? Because before you said nothing that God does is capricious or arbitrary. And if by arbitrary you mean that you mean it's not justified by a reason, but there's no reason for God to prefer glory over cheesecake, right? Then it sounds like you just think, in fact, some of the things that God does are arbitrary, right? And so you just have a self-contradictory view, right? Now, if
Jack,
you don't have a self-contradictory view, what you could do is provide the reason.
Jack, can I just ask a question real quick? Because
Yeah.
I'm not. What would it? What if? Why couldn't it be the case that it's just like that glory is just like an irreducible good? So there's no further reason. It's just an irreducible good. Like, is there? Do you think that there's an issue with that in terms of
Do I
Vekl?
think there's an issue with that, or does Vekl think?
You asking or who you
Well,
asking?
I'm asking if you think that there's an issue with that on Vekyl's view.
Oh, because he's saying that the good is given by God's nature, right? So I don't really understand what it would mean to say that God does it because he does it.
So it glorifies. You think that saying something that glorifies you, that's an external notion of the good, is what you're saying?
Well, I don't see how he wouldn't be a mere spectator of his own actions if he weren't actually justified by a reason.
Well, no, but I'm saying the reason is that it glorifies him. But if it glorifies him, there's not some further reason that it glorifies him, or
No,
there's not
the
some further reason.
point is, you can ask the question, why is glory valuable rather than something else, right? And if he says, well, because God is disposed to pursue glory rather than to pursue cheesecake, right? Then he's just saying it's a brute fact that God prefers cheesecake rather than glory, and that would be arbitrary, right? He's denying that God is arbitrary.
No, I'm not. I didn't say that. No,
You didn't
I said
say
that
that
there are
God
two.
was arbitrary?
I said there are two definitions in two ways that the word arbitrary is used. Okay. So, and I think what's happening is that I think what you're trying to do is commit an equivocation here. And what I'm trying to say is that the reason that God
Oh my
does
God,
anything
Vekl.
is ultimately for His glory. That's the reason, whether you accept it or not. It's not done because He's bored in heaven or there's
Vekl is terrible at debate. I don't. Is he does this for practice?
not that anything that He decrees to occur has no ultimate purpose behind it. We could look at the recent atrocities that occurred in the country, past couple weeks. And from the Christian worldview, we could say, well, God obviously allowed that to occur. Maybe some would even say that He even decreed for it to occur, ultimately for His purpose. Yeah, there's an ultimate good that could come out of it, as atrocious as they actually are, um, and as hard as it is to take as human beings. There's an ultimate uh, good that comes out of these things that occur. Uh, but they're not arbitrary. They're not done, capriciously or out of will, just willy nilly, um, you know, anything like that. There's an ultimate reason for it.
I'm asking about, could God have decided to pursue something other than glory? He's not constrained by that
Well,
desire, right?
that's an interesting question, because if we're talking about a being who's not contingent upon anything external to himself, um,
Maybe we could say the reason for God's actions is love. So Jesus, God, sacrificed Himself for other people, which is an act of love, unconditional love. People that didn't even have any respect for Him, people that hated Him, in fact. So God seems to be motivated by love. Where was I going with this?
then yeah, I don't know how to answer that question. We're finite creatures trying to understand this complicated being called God. So I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, I don't understand what.
Oh, okay, so if you love someone, then you want the best for them, right? So His reason for doing things would be He loves us and He wants the best for us, I guess.
Would prevent Him from, if it's up to Him, right? He's not constrained by anything else. There's nothing to prevent Him from having pursued some other desire rather than glory, right?
There's no standard that He is outside of his nature, His being, uh, that He is subjugated by.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's His.
So then he would say, like, what's the reason He chooses love over some other motivation or something? And I guess that would be arbitrary or whatever, because it's just like what He does. Yeah, I don't know. So whatever. So what if He's arbitrary?
Choice to pursue glory rather than some other value, right?
Well, that's another thing we could talk about too, is like whether or not if it's an actual choice of His, or if that's just the reality of His nature. I don't know.
Or what explains the nature that God has?
What do you mean? What explains the nature?
Yeah, so like, why is God a God of glory rather than a God of cheesecake? Does that have an explanation?
I don't know. It's just the way he revealed
So
it.
you're just saying it's the way he revealed it. No, I didn't ask you. I didn't ask you
That why is God a God of?
which
Go
did
ahead,
he
not.
reveal, right? I'm asking you what explains why God prefers glory to cheesecake.
I don't know.
Well, do you think it has an explanation?
That would require epistemic regress, wouldn't it? Because that explanation would require further explanation and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Jack, this is.
But if exactly, that was a good point. I was thinking that too. You could just keep asking that question over and over and over again until it gets to like it becomes unintelligible. Like when a kid goes, why? Fuck, I just lost my train of thought. Fuck, whatever.
This is like really simple. Like it's just a property of God. His glory.
I remember what I was gonna say. So like, God is the arbiter of reality. Like, he would decide what is. He decides what is. He is the cause of things. He causes reality. So he makes things the way they are. He decides things. He's the arbiter. He's the ultimate. So it doesn't make sense to ask like why would he need a justification for what he decides is whatever he. It would be, I guess, arbitrary, right? I don't know, because the ultimate arbiter of reality. Why would they need to justify how they make reality? Like, who are they justifying this to? They're fucking God. Why would God have to justify anything he does to anyone?
The pursuit of his glory, I suppose you could say, or the actualization of his will is part of his nature, as Vekl has said.
Wait, sorry, the just there, is that the operative word? Because we were granting it was a property.
Are you talking to me? Or
Yeah, I was talking to you, right? Is the just there the operative word?
The just? Could you sorry, just contextually.
You said it's just a property of God. You said it's really simple. It's just a property of God, right? Mm-hmm. I assume you weren't in doubt that I was agreeing that it was a property of God, right? So I take it the operative word there is supposed to be just.
No, I was in doubt that you were.
Jack, what is
that
he like
you were
pissed off?
Either confused or unaware.
Obviously, it's a property of God that he pursues glory, right? Question was, does he decide, right, to be predicable of that property rather than some other property that would exclude it?
He decides what properties are best. Because he
whether
decides
that property would be.
He literally is the arbiter of reality, the ultimate. He decides whatever property is best based on whatever. I guess it would be arbitrary because whatever he wants, since he's the decider, is. If you decide things, whatever you decide is. Yeah. Why would you need? Why would the arbiter, the ultimate arbiter of reality? Why would they ever need to provide a reason for why things are the way they are? They make them that way. What the fuck? They are the fucking reason. It's self-evident.
Be a property of God. For instance, glory is a property of God. Therefore, because God is like essentially the proper superset of everything that exists. So if God, so if glory is the property of God and the pursuit of glory is also something which is entailed by his omnibenevolence, then yes, God would actualize, or no, God's pursuing the glory would be just the pursuit of something. It would basically be entailed by his properties. However, the pursuit of, say, cheesecake would not be entailed necessarily by his properties, albeit he could do it if he, it's his prerogative, I suppose, to do it, but it wouldn't be something that's entailed by his properties.
But I don't see how it's informative to say that it's entailed by his omnibenevolence. If
It doesn't need to.
omnibenevolence,
Yeah.
right, is just amounts to saying that God is completely like himself.
Yeah, it can
Right.
be absolutely can be ambiguous. Like, why I don't
You
understand
just
why we
seem to
should
be a
have
gibberish
complete
generator. All right, I'm
understanding
not
of
interested in talking. You're
God's
just a
mind.
gibberish generator. So let's just
Can we
go.
have
Let's just
complete
shut up.
understanding of God's mind? We don't even
Shut up.
Oh, and Vekl isn't? Give me a break, Jack. I think this guy is making more sense than Vekl. And I think Jack might be intimidated here. I don't know what the fuck's going on. Jack's acting really weird here. It sounded like he got really nasally and angry.
Shut your mouth. I'm not interested in talking to a
Okay.
gibberish generator.
Okay. No.
Okay. Yeah.
You're talking to Vekl. I'm calling bullshit. I'm not interested in talking to a gibberish generator. Oh, hey Vekl, let's repeat the same thing for hours. Like, fuck off. You're a liar, Jack. This is Jack. This is how Jack runs away, I guess.
That's a good code.
Shut your mouth. I'm not interested in talking to a gibberish generator. Yeah. So Vekl.
How hilarious, dude! That has to be clipped. I'm not interested in talking to a gibberish generator. So Vekl. Hilarious. How hilarious is that? Wow.
I'm trying to understand. Does God decide whether to pursue glory rather than some other value?
Again, humans being limited to the universe.
Oh, by the way, Jack fully knows Vekl doesn't know anything about philosophy, and he's basically picking on a retard.
And its attributes. That's the only way I can answer this question. If there again, there's nothing outside of God that obligates him to do it. So he wouldn't have some sort of endeavor where there's a possible obstacle in his way, because he's all powerful. So there's no obstacles that he would ever face to accomplish whatever he wants to do. So whatever happens is because he's either decreeing it to occur or he's allowing it to occur. And even those things that occur under his permission, but not necessarily by his decree, is still working out ultimately for his good and bringing him glory.
Yeah, so you're saying there's nothing to prevent him from pursuing different ends. Is that the idea?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so then he has a reason, presumably, for pursuing one set of ends rather than another.
Sure.
Great.
Sure.
So what's the reason?
His glory.
No. We were taking his glory as his reason, right? So we're taking that as his end, and we were asking what justifies pursuing that end rather than some other end.
His glory.
Yeah, we've been through this before, right?
Yeah.
When I say to you...
Wait. I thought you didn't want to talk to a gibberish generator. Were you lying?
When I say to you, right, what's your reason for doing X, right? It's not an answer to the question to say X, right?
Okay, you're asking me because I am subject to the laws that are in this universe. So if I want to get to point A, from point A to point B at a specific time and a specific pace, then yes, it makes more sense to say, okay, the reason I'm taking this mode of transportation to get to point B at this specific time is because it rationally makes more sense. So I have time and space as my obstacle, as a possible obstacle in that sense. Okay, but since God has no obstacles, okay, he's not subject to any of these kinds of things that I as a human is, then the only other reason we can say, the only reason we can say that he does anything at all is ultimately for his glory. There is nothing that he's not in the heavens saying, being frustrated because something is not going his way. That just doesn't, that's not, that doesn't, that frame of thinking doesn't line up with what's laid out in scripture. Anything that happens, either God permits it or God decrees it. And, so God's not going to be frustrated and say, oh my goodness, I didn't see that coming. He allows.
What does that have to do with the question that you were asked? I don't understand. What does that have to do with the question you were asked?
You asking me? Say it again.
Yeah, I don't understand what that has to do with the question that you were asked.
Uh, I, I think I don't quite sure. I'm not quite sure how else to answer the question. If God, there's nothing that God is obligated to do.
So the question is there a further reason for God to pursue glory rather than
No,
something else?
no, there is no. All things are really done for His glory, according to His good counsel.
We, that might be true that that's what they're done for, but we're asking if there's a reason to have that aim rather than some other aim.
The pursuit
No,
of glory is entailed by his
Can somebody
omnibenevolent
just
property.
remove that guy from the stage?
Oh, come on. Why not? Why?
Because
Exactly.
he's a gibberish generator.
Oh, come on now.
What a liar.
All right. But anyway, yeah, I'm sorry, fellas. There really is no other answer to it. Again, I think your problem is that you can't think outside of your atheistic box, and you keep wanting to put God in some sort of position that humans are in. That they're from
But
you.
stop editorializing. If I don't, it's not just no more editorializing. It's just, if you say you can't answer the question, then what exactly are the implications? Well, you said there is no answer to that question.
No, there's only one answer. And there again, if God is the arbiter of all things that exist, then He has no obligation to do anything. There's nothing in the universe that's going to hinder Him or frustrate Him.
But this is what I asked you. I asked you how that's relevant because it doesn't seem like it's relevant to the question.
Relevant to what?
To the question that's being asked of you.
The question is assuming that there's something outside of God that he owes a reason to. And if I'm telling you that
how is this not gibberish?
All things ultimately and solely for His glory, then that's the answer.
Yeah, so we already accepted that, right? That's what He does when He said, "Is there a reason for that?" Is the answer yes or no?
No, that's where it stops. That's where it stops. It stops His glory.
Yeah, so when you say God undertakes to pursue glory rather than undertakes to pursue cheesecake, you're just saying that's arbitrary. He doesn't have a reason for preferring one over the other, right? So you're just contradicting yourself.
You make up an issue that doesn't exist in the Christian. About making cheesecake and whatever.
If he did have a reason, then why would Vekl have access to that?
We're just telling you what's laid out in the scriptures, and what's also.
Yeah, so I'll just recapitulate the objection since you don't seem to be getting it, right?
And I don't think you're getting it.
It says, shut up while I'm talking, dumbass. So I'm just going to recapitulate the objection, okay, so you don't seem to be getting it. Shut up while I'm talking, okay?
Who the hell do you think
Shut up while I'm talking, dumbass. I'm going to recapitulate the objection, right? You said, right, that nothing that God does is arbitrary or capricious. Everything He does is justified, right? And I asked you if by justified you meant justified by reasons, right?
No, justified by God. God justifies us.
And so then we went over what it was to appeal to a reason, right? And rationalizing an action, right? Now, you said, right, that the reason why God creates lakes of fire was ultimately in pursuit of His glory, right? It's glory that rationalizes, it's the pursuit of glory that rationalizes that action, right? Now, so then we asked you, right, is it up to God to decide whether to pursue glory rather than some other aim, right? And you said there's nothing external to God to constrain Him, so it is up to Him, right? So obviously, if it's up to him, he undertakes to pursue glory rather than something else, right? And you're saying there's no reason why he pursues one rather than the other, which is to say nothing justifies one course of action rather than the other, right? Now, if nothing justifies it, it's, by your own definition, arbitrary, right? And you've just contradicted yourself, right?
Well, you're welcome to think that.
You've contradicted yourself. Oh, the horror. Oh my god, I contradicted myself.
The problem is, though, that when I use the word arbitrary in the sense of why God does what he does, I'm saying that there is the reason he does these things is ultimately for his glory. Whether we comprehend that with our mind, with our finite mind, or not. But again, I want to make the distinction between that and him doing these things because there's no ultimate purpose behind it or authority with the things being done. And that's the other way that I'm trying to get you away from with regards to the other use of the word arbitrary. So could God have done things differently? Of course he can. He's all powerful. He's almighty. He's under no obligation to do it any other way.
Bro, stop rubbing your microphone. Just talk into it. Don't kiss it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to charge my phone. Sorry about that. So God is under no obligation to have done it any other way. So I mean, for me to say that he needs a justification for him to have this endeavor to seek glory, I don't know how to answer that question if we're talking about the Almighty God.
Yeah, you're just fucking contradicting yourself, dumbass, right?
Nah.
We've been over it before, right? You said nothing that God does, right, is arbitrary, which means everything he does is justified. And by justified, you mean justified by reasons, right? And you just agreed, right, that whether to pursue glory rather than something else.
All he has to do is say by justified, I mean justified by God, not justified by reasons. Bam.
Is God's choice, right? That's God's fucking choice,
Speaking as a human,
right? Which just means, right, that if he chooses one thing rather than the other, that's justified by reasons, right? And I asked you if there's a reason why God pursues glory rather than some other aim, right? Mm-hmm. And you're saying no, right? Which just means that he's arbitrary, right? And you've contradicted yourself.
Well, don't know how else.
Yeah, there is no other way to answer the question. You just have a contradictory view, right? And you were shooting your mouth off a few minutes ago, right, about how nothing God does is arbitrary, right? And, how would you atheists be in a position to criticize God, right, if God is the arbiter of all moral standards, right? You're just a fucking dumbass.
I don't care what you think. You pay my bills?
Yeah. Why don't you come back when you have an answer to the fucking question, idiot?
Yeah, well, I don't owe anything to you.
How do you keep opening your mouth? Right? We came here to hear if you could defend your position, right? And it turns out you can't fucking defend it, right? But yet you shoot your mouth off, right? You shoot your mouth off even though you can't defend your fucking dumb.
We're justified through Jesus because God justifies things. You don't necessarily need a reason to be justified. God can justify you.
Position, right? So why keep talking unless you can produce an argument in defense of your position?
Yeah, but you can't even give me a justified reason as to why you're going to reject it anyway.
That's a claim. You want to try supporting that claim?
Can you give me one?
I didn't ask you. When I asked you a question, I didn't ask you to ask me a question, right? I asked you to give me a justification for the claim, dumbass. So what's the justification for the... Why are you over-talking me? What's the justification for the claim?
It's my turn to talk. Can you give me a justified reason?
You think I'm going to drop it? Do you think I'm going to drop it?
Can you give me a justified reason as to how anything that I said could be demonstrated as being...
Holy fuck.
Sorry.
What's this heavy breathing from Jack? Is he jerking off?
You made the
Yes.
claim that
Can you give me?
Shut up.
Can you give me?
Oh, I beat someone in a debate online. Oh, I showed how they contradicted themselves.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll just wait until you're done.
Everything I said can be demonstrated as irrational, according to your worldview. What are you basing it on?
Great. Now you said, right? You didn't just ask that question, right? You
No, I'm
originally
asking.
made. Shut up! You originally made the claim that I wouldn't be able to give you a justification.
Yeah,
Silence!
can
Right.
you?
Now I'm asking you to support the claim. Can you?
Can you give me a
Sorry.
justified reason
Sorry. You
as
made the
to how
claim, right?
that it could be considered logically irrational? Can you give it to me?
Did you make the claim or not?
Yes. And now I'm asking
Great.
the question.
Now when you made that claim, what I said was, where's the justification for that claim? So what's the answer to that question?
You haven't demonstrated anything that was going to prove to me that what I said can be demonstrated as irrational. All you're doing is making an arbitrary claim that what I said is a contradiction. I'm telling you that in the Christian worldview, since God is the arbiter of all things that exists, therefore he has no obligation to anyone or anything to give any type of reason for why he does what he does. His reason, however, is primarily, is solely, ultimately for his glory. Now, you can take it or leave it. That's not, but if you don't like it, that's not my problem. I just want to know, though, from your worldview, how is that irrational? And what are you basing on? What objective means do you have to prove to me that that's irrational?
Sorry, you contradicted yourself.
Okay, how did I contradict?
You want me to go over it again?
Okay, I think your problem is with the word arbitrary.
Oh, so you are equivocating on arbitrary then, is that right?
No, I'm not. You are. No, you are.
Sorry, so let's go through it again, right? I understood you to say, right, that nothing that God does is arbitrary, right? And by that you mean that everything that God does is justified, right? And justification is an appeal to reasons that rationalize an action, right? And so you agreed that
God, because God said so, be a reason.
whether God pursues glory rather than some other aim is his choice.
Because if God told me do this, then I would be justified to do that because that's what God told me to do.
Because there's nothing external to him that would compel him to do one thing rather than another. And when asked, well, what justifies that decision to pursue glory rather than some other aim, you said there is no further justification, which by your own definition of arbitrary means that he's arbitrary. Even though you said that nothing that he does is arbitrary, right? That's a contradiction. I don't know why you didn't get it the first few times, right? But maybe you'll get it now.
Okay, let me read something to you. I'm looking at the definition of the word arbitrary. There's a total of 5 definitions. I'm not going to read all of them to you. I'll read the first and the fourth one. Okay. The first definition says this: subject to individual will or judgment without restriction, contingent solely upon one's discretion. Okay, that's the first definition. And the fourth definition is based on whim or personal preference without reason or pattern. Okay, now, when I say God does things arbitrarily, which I very rarely say, okay, I'm using it in the sense of the first definition here, that there is no restriction. God has nothing outside of himself that forces him to do what he does in the universe. Okay, it is, according to the definition, contingently solely upon his discretion. Okay, but what I'm criticizing is the assumption that these things are done whimsically, without reason, without pattern, without authority. And this is the problem that atheists have. This is the definition that the atheist is trying to assert with regards to God's actions. And that's what I'm trying to get you away from. Now, if you don't like the fact that I use arbitrary in the sense of the first definition, fine with me. You could call it a contradiction if you want. The only answer that any Christian is going to be able to give you is that God does these things ultimately for his glory, period. There's nothing frustrating him, forcing him to do what he does, or anything of the sort.
Yeah, he does it for no reason.
Yeah, that's what we said. So I don't know why you wasted our time with all that nonsense. You're just agreeing that you contradicted yourself, right? Because you agreed that it's his choice to pursue glory rather than cheesecake, right? And what rationalizes that decision? Nothing, on your view, which is just to say that it's a purely arbitrary action in the sense that it has no justification on the basis of any reason, right?
So let me ask you.
So you want to waste our time some more?
So does God? So is it wrong that God doesn't have a reason outside of himself to do these things?
Not relevant.
Okay, so is it self-contradictory that God does these things outside of?
I'm just saying you contradicted yourself.
No, I don't think so.
Oh yeah, so shall I go through the argument again, dumbass, and show you where the contradiction is?
No, I'm pretty satisfied with my answer.
Oh yeah? All right, I'll go through it again for everybody
Yeah, go
else's
ahead.
benefit. Right, yeah. So, Vekl said, and you can stop me, Vekl, if at any time I misdescribe what you said, right? You said that everything that God does, right, is undertaken for a reason, right? Which is to say that everything that God does is justified by a reason, right? Everything that God does is justified by a reason, right? Now, you also said that whether God chooses to pursue glory rather than cheesecake is his decision, his choice, because there's nothing external to him to constrain him to do one thing rather than the other. So it's up to him to decide which one he pursues, right? And so what rationalizes the decision to pursue glory rather than cheesecake or any other value? Well, you said nothing. He doesn't have a fucking reason to do it, right? But you said everything that he does is justified by a reason. But not that decision, right? And you want to say you're satisfied that you didn't contradict yourself, you fucking dishonest dumbass.
Jesus said in John 15 that if the world hates you, remember that it hated me first.
That's the best you can do?
Holy
I
shit.
embrace the name calling. Appreciate it.
That's the best you
Thanks,
can
guys.
do?
Vekl is so
That was a
wrecked.
good brain exercise
Yeah.
today. Take care.
So long, dumbass.
He's so dumb.
Jack, what I don't understand is, I guess I don't really understand the reason if it's like, if he says it's just an irreducible good, right?
My point is, it's always going to turn out to be something brute. There's no way to have general. Well, there could be some norms that are built into agency itself, right? But they're not going to be the kind of robust norms that are going to be interesting, right? Like if you just say, well, given that I'm an agent, I must be committed to self-knowledge because given that I'm an agent, I have desires and beliefs which rationalize actions. I therefore have a commitment to to realizing the aims that the actions that my beliefs and desires rationalize are in service of, right? And so therefore I have some commitment just in virtue of being an agent to having knowledge of the facts of the world and the facts about myself that would conduce to realizing those aims, right? That might be described as not brute in some sense, at least not contingently, not brutally contingent, right? Because it's built into agency itself, right? But those are going to be very thin right, very, very general norms. They're not going to be the types of norms that rationalize pursuing, rationalize ordaining lakes of fire rather than lakes of rape, right? And so whether you
Well,
do one thing
suppose.
rather than another is going to be brute.
Well, I just want to see if there's some further thread that's like that there's a problem with besides like. I know that this isn't exactly what Vekl was saying, but if you take this like first horn approach to the Euthyphro dilemma or something like that, and you say that there's just some external reason to God, and he can't control, like he can't control like what is good, what is bad in the world or something. You're just saying that that's just irrelevant to Vekl's view.
Yeah, that's fine, because what I'm really objecting to is the idea that the good could be internal to God, right? Because the point is, for God, if you say the good is identical to God's nature, right, then it can't be the case that God acts for reasons, right? Because it's just saying, because the good is just what God does, right? So it can't be that God does X because X is identical to his nature, right? That wouldn't be an explanation.
All right, that's right.
Yeah, and that's all that was the whole dialectic was basically an attempt to show that would commit you to an. Yeah, that's fine.
You've just been completely obliterated.
Shut up while I'm talking, right?
You've been folded like a chair caught with your pants down.
Will you fucking shut him up? I wanna respond.